Hello, guys. Welcome to another episode of Snappy Potions, and happy 4th of July. Yes, the 4th of July is the day that U.S. signed the Declaration of Independence, and not exactly the day when it actually gained independence from Britain. So, okay, I was just practicing some math, but as you know, we're going to um continue reading and writing. And the thing is, uh, we scored 100 last time, so I think we've quite mastered literature. So we're gonna actually move on to um, history. All right. Oh. Okay. So this passage. Oh, this is awesome. This passage is adapted from a letter written by Thomas Jefferson to James Madison. It was originally written in 1785 when Jefferson was residing in France. Guess what this is about? It's about the founders of the US. So, yep, deeply related to the 4th of July. So, if we actually type in Independence Day, and I don't mean the movie, um, yes, happy 4th of July. Let's see. Um, who was it? James Thomas Jefferson to James Madison. So, apparently, it's yeah, yeah. Thomas Jefferson was involved in it. John Adams was, and Benjamin Franklin was, but I don't think Madison really was. But yeah, Thomas Jefferson is involved in the Declaration of Independence, and I didn't even read this passage before I'm recording right now. So before my recording, this is the first time I ever saw this. Wow, so it goes along with the theme then, the 4th of July. Oh wow, this is such a coincidence here. So okay, a letter written by Thomas Jefferson to James Madison. So Thomas Jefferson was one of the people who signed the Declaration of Independence, the 4th of July. Okay, um, but James Madison apparently didn't, as you just saw on Wikipedia. But he is a founding father also. So yeah, let's give him some credit. Okay, so both very deeply related to Independence Day. Yay. Okay. 7 o'clock and retired to my fireside. I have determined to enter into conversation with you. This Fontainebleau is a village of about 5,000 inhabitants when the court is not here, and 20,000 when they are, occupying a valley through which runs a brook, and on each side of it a ridge of small mountains, most of which are naked rock. The king comes here in the fall always to hunt. His court attend him, as do also the foreign diplomatic corps, but as this is not indispensably required, and my finances do not admit the expense of a continued residence here, I propose to come occasionally to attend the king's levees, returning again to Paris, distant 40 miles. This being the first trip, I set out yesterday morning to take a view of the place. For this purpose, I shaped my course towards the highest of the mountains in sight, to the top of which was about a league. As soon as I had got clear of the town, I fell in with a poor woman walking at the same rate with myself and going the same course. Wishing to know the condition of the laboring poor, I entered into conversation with her. which I began my inquiries for the path which would lead me into the mountain, and thence proceeded to inquiries into her vocation, condition, and circumstance. She told me she was a day laborer at 8 or 4 D sterling the day, that she had 2 children to maintain, and to pay a rent of 30 livres for her house, which would consume the hire of 75 days, that often she could get no employment, and of course was without bread. As we had walked together near a mile, and she had so far served me as a guide, I gave her, on parting, 24 sous. She burst into tears of a gratitude which I could perceive was unfeigned, because she was unable to utter a word. She had probably never before received so great an aid. This little attendrissement with the solitude of my walk led me into a train of reflections on that unequal division of property which occasions the numberless instances of wretchedness which I had observed in this country, and is to be observed all over Europe. The property of this country is absolutely concentrated in a very few hands, having revenues of from half a million of guineas a year downwards. These employ the flower of the country as servants, some of them having as many as 200 domestics not laboring. They employ also a great number of manufacturers and tradesmen, and lastly the class of laboring husbandmen. But after all these comes the most numerous of all the classes, that is, the poor who cannot find work. I asked myself what could be the reason that so many should be permitted to beg who are willing to work, in a country where there is a very considerable proportion of uncultivated lands. These lands are kept idle mostly for the sake of game. It should seem then that it must be because of the enormous wealth of the proprietors, which places them above attention to the increase of their revenues by permitting these lands to be labored. I am conscious that an equal division of property is impracticable, but the consequences of this enormous inequality, producing so much misery to the bulk of mankind, legislators cannot invent too many devices for subdividing property, only taking care to let their subdivisions go hand in hand with the natural affections of the human mind. The descent of property of every kind, therefore, to all the children, or to all their brothers and sisters, or other relations in equal degree, is a politic measure and a practicable one. Another means of silently lessening the inequality of property is to exempt all from taxation below a certain point, and to tax the higher portions of property in geometrical progression as they rise, whenever there is in any country uncultivated lands and unemployed poor. It is clear that the laws of property have been so far extended as to violate natural right. The earth is given as a common stock for a man to labor and live on. If, for the encouragement of industry, we allow it to be appropriated, we must take care that other employment be furnished to those excluded from the appropriation. Dot dot dot, and it goes on, and this must be a really long letter. So, who to who? Thomas Jefferson to James Madison. Okay, so that was a very, very, very long letter. I don't think um, people nowadays would write letters as long as this on pen and paper. Okay, so what's number one in this little mini glossary here? Attendrissement. What is that? Emotion. Okay, so what attendrissement? This little emotion. Okay. Farmers. What means farmers? Husbandmen are farmers. What? It seems like husbandmen mean like husbands. What? Husbandmen are farmers. Okay. So there's a lot of old language here, like throw, um, sauce or D sterling or um, livers or um, attendrissmen or husbandmen. All these are very old words, but to look at the big point, the big picture. Um, when we see the big picture, we see the economics of Europe right now and how it's going like super bad. I mean, all the poor, uh, they're all begging on the streets, while so the division of property is like incalculable and impractical because the rich men who have so much property are so rich, unimaginably rich, and the guys that don't have property, the workers and the beggars, they're unimaginably poor. So the difference between those two classes are are enormous. So yeah, he talks. So Thomas Jefferson talks with this woman who mm, who's really poor. She has two children to maintain. Wait, what's SOS or sterling? Let's see how much that is. SOS. What's a SOS? No, not French. Of low value, a very small, and that is 8 SOS a day. What's the sterling? So this is France, okay. Oh yeah, because it's at Paris. What? Donald Sterling. Who is that? Anyways, the sterling. If we say definition, there we go. I hope. No, no, no. The wait, sterling. All these sterling people. British money. Oh, I get it. Or 40 sterling. Okay, so 8 in French money or 4 in British money. Okay, so Thomas Jefferson, kind of feel pity for this woman. So when they part, he's a good man and gives her 24 subs. But that's still a little. She can earn that in just 3 days. I mean, she's a poor woman. He should give her more. Mm, yeah, the poor who cannot find work. Uh, it's the most numerous of all the classes. So if we imagine a big pyramid like that, like a big triangle, there's a whole bunch of poor people, and just at the top, like 1% of rich people. That's how France is right now. And this is probably at the French Revolution. Yes, 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 yes. 4 years later, and they'll come to the French Revolution. Oh, great. So, yeah, this is a bad time for France and Europe. Okay. And this talks about bread, so remember that the French people, they protested for bread. Give us bread. Give us bread. And then this woman also wants bread. Yeah. And uh she she didn't get any bread. So she's angry. Yeah. Because in this time period, bread was very important, and especially in Europe, it was one you it was a food you absolutely needed to survive, like bread and salt or bread and butter. But butter was a bit too high class, so let's say bread and salt or bread and sugar or just plain bread. That was the best food for the poor people, but they didn't even get that. So imagine how bad it must have been for them. Yeah. Okay. I wonder what bread and salt or bread and sugar tastes like. But I did hear that in the medieval times and during this time, for the poor people at least, um, they did eat it with. Wait, let me check. Bread and salt. Oh, well, it's a film. It's a film. But, oh. Oh, so they do eat it with bread and salt. What about bread and sugar? Do they eat it with sugar? Oh, so they do. Okay. Okay. But I think it's more bread and salt than bread and sugar. Okay. So, um, let's solve the problems then. Okay? Oh, there we go. So, last time we were quite enthusiastic at our results, uh, by our results, because we scored 111 out of 11, but I doubt that we're gonna get 11 out of 11 this time because, as you can see, it's much more harder than literature, and it's my first time ever doing history because literature is much easier. So, okay. Jefferson's central claim in the passage is that, um, central claim in the passage. Hmm. The current system of inheritance and ownership is unlikely ever to change. Wealth should be redistributed in a way that benefits the majority of society. The unemployed should use their energies to work the land rather than ask. This is definitely incorrect. Everybody has the natural right to as much property as he or she thinks necessary. So, the central claim should be in the conclusion, I think. Whenever there is in any country uncultivated lands and unemployed poor, it is clear that the laws of property have been so far extended as to violate natural right. The earth is given as a common stock for man to labor and live on. If for the encouragement of industry we allow it to be appropriated, we must take care that other employment be furnished to those excluded from the appropriation. Okay, so wealth should be redistributed in a way that benefits. This is, yeah, kind of it. Or is it it? The current system of inheritance and ownership is unlikely ever. No, 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 no. He hopes it does. Yeah, so it's between these, but I don't think he ever said you can get as much property as you think necessary because everyone needs property. So if then the economy will go like all tumbling down because everyone wants great stuff. It's just too much for France. So yeah, I don't think. And yeah, if we summarize this whole passage, I don't think there's so much um information on this. I don't see anything that's related to um natural right to get as much property as you think necessary. So let's look for necessary. That's a keyword. Necessary, 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 necessary. I see natural right, but no necessary. I think it's this. Wealth should be redistributed in a way that benefits the majority of society. So let's look for redistribute it now. Redistribute it. Redistribute it. Redistribute it. Um. mm, Oh, there we go. The descent of property of every kind, therefore, to all the children, or to all the brothers and sisters, or other relations in equal degree, is a politic measure and a practical one. So, you should distribute it property to everyone, to all the children, all the brothers and sisters, all the relations in equal degree. So yeah, it benefits the majority of society if you give equal amount to everyone. So it's a practical one and a politic one. Inequality of property is to exempt all from taxation below a certain point. I don't think the choices say anything about taxation. So yeah, I think it's B. Yeah. Let's go with B. I think problem number one is correct. Okay, so um, number two, Jefferson uses the example of the woman he meets on the road in order to provide a moving anecdote in order to distract his reader from. Oh, come on. He wants us to believe that the woman is poor and that France is going horribly. France's economy and society is going horribly. But of course, we were thinking that, but why does he want to distract us from thinking that? No, he wants us to think that. Alright, not B, not A, not A. Illustrate his surroundings with, a, with an atypical example of the native people. A typical example of the native people? Maybe. Support the claim that the economic situation is worse than. I haven't read a single word about Madison. Nothing about Madison. Mm, transition from his specific experience to a more general argument. Specific experience. Mm, he uses the example to transition from his specific experience. I think it's the opposite. He uses it to transition from a general argument to a specific experience. So his general argument is um actually there's no general argument. It's just from a description of the village, like this village has about 5,000 inhabitants. Like the king comes here in the fall always to hunt. Um, its court attended, occupying a valley through which runs a brook. Small mountains, most of which are naked rock. I'm gonna come occasionally to attend the king's levees, and I'm going to return to Paris, 40 miles away, and then, yeah, he starts talking with the poor woman. Okay, so not this, not that, and not that. So yeah, illustrate his surroundings with a typical example of the native people. Because why I want to do this is it makes you feel closer to the passage, like using an example, like his own experience. He's like basically saying, "Oh, I got to talk with the people that's actually experiencing this. Look how I interviewed her, like that." Like if you just ask someone not native, like a professional expert, it's not as much convincing. Like, do you know anything about what's going on in France? And then that guy's like, oh yeah, it's going horribly. But a person that's native to France might say, oh yeah, it's going horribly. We're not gaining any, we're not getting any bread. We're like earning 8 sous a day. Um, yeah, it's a more direct view. You need a first person view to be more specific. Yeah, okay. So over the course of the passage, the main focus shifts from the description of the locale to a broader discussion of principles. A humorous anecdote to a position on a popular US debate. Why humorous anecdote? An analysis of the king's situation to an analysis of it. Come on, a king's when did he experiences in France to Madison's? No, no, no. A description of the locale to a broader discussion of principles. So I think locale means location. Because if it's location, we're definitely. Yeah, so the location. I guess it's an old word. So this is, as I said, this is like the location description, and then later it goes to a discussion of principles, like discussing how it's practical, but you actually that France needs to work hard on distributing equal property to everyone. All these principles, he talks about that. But first, in the beginning of this passage, he like starts kind of like a story, a little diary. So, yeah, a description of the location he's in, the little French town, Fontainebleau. Wait, is Fontainebleau like still existing? Let's see. Oh, Fontainebleau. Okay, let's see what it's like. Oh wow, I wanna go here. That looks very, very awesome. Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. This must be a very, 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 very rich place right now. But I guess oh my goodness, this is like the nobles' place. This is like the place where all the nobles live. Wow, but I guess in the old days there were more poor people than rich people. Okay. So number four, the main purpose of the passage's information about Fontainebleau is to contextualize the anecdote and argument that follow, interest the reader in the narrative before changing topics. I think this is it. I really got interested when I thought this was like a literature thing, but it eventually went to like a discussion. Alright, let's start from A. Provide a picturesque counterpoint to the terrible poverty that Jefferson witnesses. A counterpoint to. Wait, what's a counterpoint exactly? Counter is like opposite, but no, not music. Uh, an argument, idea, or theme used to create contrast. So contrast to poverty. So it's like this village has like royal people living in it, all wearing silk gowns and with uh, velvet sofas. No, it just describes the general village, right? Yeah. Mm, yeah. Next, describe a foreign land to someone who has never visited France. Is this really it? I don't think so. It's not like this is a tourism book or something. Um, it's not like to describe the location. Like the location isn't really important. What's real important is the argument. So contextualize the anecdote and argument that follow. So what exactly is an anecdote? Well, I forgot. I forgot really. A short and amusing or interesting story. No, not incident. An account regarded as unreliable or hearsay. So it can be an incident like an interesting story. What's this? Interest the reader in the narrative before changing topics. I think this is really tricky. I have to bet I'm gonna get this wrong, but I'm gonna say D, because this is what actually happened to me. I was interested in the narrative before it changed topics, like 7 o'clock and retired to my fireside. Like it was very very similar to a literature passage. So yeah, it interested me. It really interested me. It was like I was in a story time passage before it changed topics and it got a little less interesting, right? Yeah, yeah. Sauce. What was the other thing? Sauce. These sterling livers. That's not very interesting. Okay, so Jefferson implies that I'm gonna get this wrong. I might. Um, more wrong than right. Right. Yeah. So Jefferson implies that the initial purpose of his walk was to better understand the physical what? Get out of town. What? Understand the condition. Avoid running. What? No, definitely not trying to avoid running into King, not to get out of the town, to think more clearly. He wants to stay longer, to better understand the physical, not physical geography, understand the condition of non-American laborers. So yeah, I think this is it. He wants to know what's happening to the laborers in France, what's happening to the laborers in England, what's happening to the laborers in other countries, and he's learned through his work, through his walk, through his walk um, along the village, that it's not going very good for non-American laborers. But I guess it's going good for American laborers because, yeah, Boston Tea Party, Declaration of Independence, I guess American laborers are more free now. So, okay. Which choice, okay, provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? Let's see now. 8 to 12, first of all. 8 to 12, but as miles. But as miles. But as this is not indispensably required and the finances do not admit the expense of a continued residence, here I propose to come occasionally to attend the king's levees, returning again to Paris, distant 40 miles. Now, that doesn't talk about the purpose of his walk. Okay, 13 to 14. This place. This being the first room. I set out yesterday morning to take a view of the place. Uh-oh. Physical geography. I think this is it. He wants to see how it's like. Uh-oh. Let's keep reading. 16 to 18. As soon, of course. As soon as I got clear of the town, I fell in with a poor woman. Oh, so at first, I had to read this. I shaped my course towards the highest of the mountains. So he was like taking a little trip to see like the view. Yeah, basically the view. So he went to the top of the mountain. 18 to 20, wishing to know the condition of the laboring poor. I entered into conversation with her, but that's not the purpose of his walk, right? That's like he met her, and then he suddenly got curious about the condition. So I set out yesterday morning to take a view of the place. So two, what comes after two is usually, um, the reason. So he he took a walk. He went out on a walk to take a view. So understand and observe the physical geography around him. So it sounded a bit silly, but apparently that's the answer. Okay, so yeah, that means 13 to 14. Yeah, I set out yesterday morning to take a view of the place. Okay, so yeah, taking a view of the place is like basically looking around him. So looking around the physical geography around him. Okay, so number 7. What main effects does the phrase flower of the country, line 40, have on the tone of the passage? Line 40. Okay. These employ the flower of the country as servants, some of them having as many as 200 domestics not laboring. Let's see now. Aligns the tone by providing a metaphor of beauty in an otherwise bleak narrative. Let's see. The property of this country is absolutely concentrated in a very few hands, having revenues of from 500,000 of guineas a year downwards. These employ the flower of the country as servants. Yeah, it kind of lightens the tone, like the flower of the country. A tone of praise by comparing the workers of France to those. What? I don't think it's really praise. It creates an optimistic tone by showing that the people of France are variously employed. No, France is going quite horribly right now. There are a bunch of people who are unemployed. Okay. What's an impassioned tone? Impassioned, filled with or showing great emotion, to describe the discrepancy between the relative privilege of the few and the hardship of the many. Um, yeah, I think this is it, because his main argument is that it he wealth and property should be distributed in a way that benefits the majority of society, which is the poor. So, and he kind of contrasted the difference between the poor and the rich. So, it provides an emotional tone to describe the discrepancy between the relative privilege of the few and the hardship of the many. So, this mm, is concentrated in a very few hands. So, very few rich people. So, these employ the flower of the country, but very few flowers and more thorns, I would say, yeah. See, I'm a good metaphor maker. So the rich are the flowers and the poor are the thorns, and as you know, in a rose bush there are more thorns than flowers. Okay. Yay, that was a good metaphor. Okay. So, mm, it's concentrated, so like concentrated in very few people. So the rich, it's all concentrated on them, all on them, and but it's so little. Like the percentage of all the people in France, there are more, way much more thorns out there. Okay, so there we go. As used in line 49, game most nearly means game. Game. Not not video game or anything like that. Game could mean hunting. Alright, let's see now. These lads are kept idle mostly for the sake of game. Tricks to be played. No, plans to be. No, sports to be practiced. There we go. Animals to be hunted. So there are lands out there that people could buy, like poor people could buy and farm on, but it's just kept so that the animals could like hunt. I mean, so that animals could reproduce and live in it in like the forests. And yeah, so they can hunt the animals. They want to leave the forest alone because if they leave the forest alone, they're leaving the animals alone, the animals to be hunted. So yeah. If it was today, I don't think they would I don't think the people would really care and just they would just chop down the forest. Because right now we have much more important things than hunting animals, right? Although, yeah, I get it. Deforestation, that's bad. There are pros and cons of everything. So animals to be hunted, as I said, game. Definitely not tricks to be played or sports to be practiced. Animals to be hunted. Leave the forest alone. Actually, that's quite good for the modern day. With the environment crisis, you shouldn't leave the forest alone, but you shouldn't hunt neither. Yeah, so that's bad too. No hunting allowed. Which choice best describes Jefferson's attitude towards socio-economic conditions in France? Um, mm, which choice best describes Jefferson's attitude? He approves of the king's policies. No. He sees France as an isolated case with unique conditions not applicable. No, other countries are suffering the same. Are suffering the same. Like the entire of Europe, whole entire Europe is just going crazy right now. He is affronted at the few opportunities given to the poor. He is affronted. What does affronted mean? Affronted. Offend the modesty or values of. Why is he offending them? No, he's not offending them. He is pleased that the United States does not experience the same conditions as France. I guess so. But I don't. I think he kind of feels sorry for France, so not that. And he definitely does not approve of the king's policies. Uh, it doesn't say that it's unique so much, because I do believe other countries are going through, like, let's say, dictatorship. Like France this time, it was like Louis the 16th. Like, I am the Sun King, the king of the majestic sun, like that. Yeah, basically. Kind of like dictatorship, but not exactly. Dictatorial monarchy. That's a new word created by J.H. Academy. He is affronted at a few opportunities. Yeah, so no offending people. This is definitely wrong. I want to find out, but let's just say that he's pleased, because if I were him, I would be pleased that my country isn't suffering the same as this horrible country. So, yeah. Jefferson's statement that he is conscious that an equal division of property is impracticable, lines 44 to 45, implies that he has decided there's no point in pursuing his goals because they would ultimately prove impossible to carry out, whereas ideals are not entirely realistic, yet still believes that some improvement is possible. Yeah, that's Jefferson style. Does not care about what is realistically possible. What? Believes that even though property cannot be divided equally, it should still be divided according to man's. Nah. He still believes that some improvement is possible, like, what is it, 54 to 45? But, uh, but the consequences of this enormous inequality, producing so much misery to the bulk of mankind, legislators cannot invent too many devices for subdividing property. Uh, Only taking care to let their subdivisions go hand in hand with the natural affections of the human mind. So, I think he does believe that some improvement is possible, because he thinks that France can't just leave alone the people like this. They have to do something, although not the best machines, the best devices. Alright. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer? Okay. It should labor, let's say, 49 to 53. It should seem then that it must be because of the enormous wealth of the proportions which places them above attention to the increase of the revenue. No, nothing about his idea. Uh, 55 to 56. But the consequences of this enormous inequality, producing so much misery to the bulk of mankind. Let's keep reading. 57 to 59. Um, legislators, legislators cannot invent too many devices for subdividing property, only taking care of their subdivisions. 59 to 62. Um, the descent of property of every kind, therefore, to all the children or to all the brothers or other relations in equal degree is a political measure and a practical one. Yeah, I think this is it. First, he talks about it being unpracticable, and then he talks about it being quite politic and kind of practicable. So, I know I got a whole bunch wrong, but let's just check anyways. Oh my, what? What's this? What's this? Number two. This was one of the stuff that I was so sure about. What's this? Alright, transition from a specific experience to a more general argument. What? I thought this was the opposite. This choice is the best answer. Jefferson uses the example of the woman to provide the specific example of the kind of people he is making an argument for. Okay, so I guess he's using this specific experience, and then he's gonna transition to a general argument. Alright, I get it. I was kind of confused because I thought from here to here, which is from the location to the experience, but apparently it's talking about the experience to the argument. Okay, wait, why is this wrong? Although the example of the woman does illustrate Jefferson's current surroundings, he does not describe it as atypical. Oh yeah, I didn't look up atypical. What is atypical? Not representative. What? I thought atypical was the same as typical. I thought it was representative. No, I thought it illustrate his surroundings and a typical example of the native. Oh come on, this is like such. I should have looked up atypical. Man, okay. So number four. Yeah, I knew it. I said I told you I was gonna get this wrong because this is what I felt. If you do remember, this is what I felt. I felt that it interested me, but yeah, I guess you wanted to contextualize the anecdote and argument that follow. Let's see. This choice is the best answer. Jefferson mentions Fontainebleau in his letter to Madison in order to provide the setting for the anecdote about the woman he meets and eventually as a setting for his larger economic argument. Uh, oh, so he wants to describe the location to Madison to give a setting first, right? And then as a setting for his larger argument. So he's trying to describe a little, setting a little village. Then why is this wrong? Although the setting Jefferson describes is interesting to readers, I knew it. It is interesting, but I thought it wasn't its main purpose. Although it did interest me. So it's not interesting to reader, it's not his main purpose, right? Also, the village he is describing is ultimately connected to his later argument. Okay. So it isn't really changing topics, it's kind of like related to his little argument later. So yeah, its main purpose, obviously, is not to entertain and interest James Madison, right? Yeah. It kind of connects to his later argument. So what's this? He's pleased. No, wait, what's this? This is hard, as you know. So I chose, he is pleased that the United States, of course, this is wrong. He is affronted at the few opportunities. Why? Beginning with Jefferson's encounter with the woman on the road, Jefferson realized how unbalanced economic opportunities are in France. Wait, what's affronted again? Offend the modesty of values of. Oh, so he he is so he's the one who's being offended. I thought it was about him offending the poor. Oh yeah, he is affronted at. So he is affronted by. So he is what was the word again? He was offended by how like the few opportunities given to the poor. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Why is this wrong? Jefferson actually notes that there are parallels between France and the U.S. in terms of their socio-economic disparities. Really? Parallels between the U.S. and France? Really? I thought the U.S. was having a much better time. Uh, mm, conscious. Well, I can't. Well, I can't find that part about him saying it was similar to the U.S., but I do agree. Yeah, he is offended. So I thought it was him offending the poor, but he is offended by the few opportunities. Of course, he's offended. So he's shocked by how poor the poor are. Yeah. Okay, next. This is weird. I got the which choice provides the best evidence wrong, although I got this right. So this is right. Yeah. This choice is the best answer. Jefferson states that even though he knows that equal division is unrealistic, as I said, he believes that some changes can still be made. Yep. Because it has to be made. Yeah, so that's right, but why is the evidence thing? These lines have more to do with a possible solution to the problem of unequal property than acknowledging that his ideals are unrealistic. So, the solution, wait, let's go back to here. So, what's the right one? Now, legislators to mind, 57 to 59. Uh, this choice is the best answer. These lines point to the fact that even though Jefferson is aware that his ideals might be unrealistic, he believes that some changes can still be made. Let's see now. Legislators to mind. Please let me highlight properly. No. Okay. So legislators cannot invent too many devices. Oh yeah. As I said, like before I actually went on to like view my answers, I was like, and remember, alright, so this is like a flashback. And remember, he said, uh, they can't make so many machines or devices, but it has to work because it's bad for the French people. So yeah, it's going to work. So it is kind of practical. Like something can be done. Yeah, there we go. That's the flashback. And um I guess I was right, but I chose the wrong thing, which means I'm wrong. So they can't make too many devices. Like they can't make a super machine that can like equally divide according to all the proportions of the rich and poor, according to all the statistics. This is not the future or anything. They can't like make a device for like dividing property equally to everyone. Mm, wait, what's subdivisions? Only taking care subdivisions. An area of land divided into plots for sale, only taking care to let their subdivisions go hand in hand with the natural affections of the human mind. So I guess, um, oh, legislators cannot invent too many devices for subdividing property, only taking care to let their subdivisions go hand in hand with the natural affections of the human mind. Um, so basically, the human mind, mm, it isn't perfect. So it could be impractical, but there's still some chance that this equal division thing might work. So yeah, mm, that his ideals might be unrealistic. He believes that some changes can still be made. Mm, I still don't understand this. Why is this wrong? These lines have more to do with a possible solution. Onward, let's look at it again. The descent of property of every kind ever to all the children or to all the brothers and sisters or other relations in equal degree is a politic measure. So, yeah, that's his main idea. He's trying to give all the prop. He's trying to give the property to all the people, all the children, all their brothers and sisters. A very relationship is a politic measure and a practical one. So yeah, this is like kind of like the solution to how this is gonna work. He's saying this is quite practicable. Mm. So he has to. Oh yeah, he know this doesn't really say that he knows that his ideals are not entirely realistic. This is more like a optimistic part because he's saying it's a politic measure and a practical one. But in the real answer, yes, he does acknowledge that. He says there can't they can't like suddenly invent a device to subdivide property equally, perfectly. So yeah, I guess that's it. So, guys, this was a really, really confusing, complicated passage, a really hard one, but we did make it. At least we got for our first try. So there we go, guys. Happy Independence Day, and yeah, this was very related to the theme, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, and yeah, but more about France than the U.S. So, all right, I guess next time we'll try to aim for 3 or 2 or 1, but yeah, we still did a pretty good job. So there we go, guys, and I will be uploading a new Snappy Potions video every week. So I hope you wait for the next one. Bye.